The emergency beacon cut through the silence of deep space like a dying scream. Commander Zara Calix pressed her six-fingered hand against the cold metal wall of the research station, feeling the vibrations of failing life support systems through her palm. Outside the reinforced windows, the Vex Armada stretched across the starfield like a plague of mechanical locusts, their dark ships blotting out entire constellations. "How long until they break through the shields?" she asked, though she already knew the answer would be measured in hours, not days. Dr. Ven Thurox, his blue skin pale with fear, looked up from his console with eyes that reflected the flickering emergency lights. 6 hours at most. The quantum barriers are failing faster than we calculated. These Vex weapons, they're designed specifically to crack our defensive technology. Zara nodded grimly. The Galactic Research Consortium had established this station in the Kepler void precisely because it was isolated, far from any major trade routes or military installations. It was the perfect place to conduct sensitive experiments on quantum crystalline structures without interference. Now that isolation had become their death sentence. The research station housed 47 beings from 12 different species, all brilliant minds working on technologies that could revolutionize space travel. But brilliance meant nothing when faced with the Vex Collective's hunger for conquest. The machine entities had swept through 3 star systems in the past month, leaving nothing but stripped worlds and silence in their wake. "The beacon is still transmitting on all frequencies," reported Lieutenant Cass, her antennae twitching nervously, "but the nearest consortium patrol is 4 days away, and the hegemony forces pulled back to defend their core worlds." Zara closed her eyes and felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders like lead. She had sent the distress call knowing it was likely futile. The major powers were too busy protecting their own territories to risk ships for a remote research facility. The few independent militias that might respond simply lacked the firepower to challenge a full Vex battle group. The truth was simple and brutal. They were alone. "Commander, incoming transmission from the Vex fleet," announced the communications officer, his voice barely steady. The main display flickered to life, revealing the angular face of a Vex Prime. Its metallic features showed no emotion as it spoke in the cold, synthesized voice that had become the soundtrack of terror across the galaxy. "Biological entities of Research Station Kepler 7, you will surrender all personnel and technological assets within 4 standard hours. Resistance will result in immediate termination. Your research into quantum crystalline manipulation has been deemed valuable to the collective. Comply and your deaths will be swift." The transmission ended, leaving only the hum of failing systems and the quiet breathing of the 47 beings who now faced their final hours. Zara looked around the command center at faces filled with fear, but also determination. These were not soldiers, but they were not cowards either. All senior staff to the main conference room. "If we're going to die here, we're going to make it cost them something." As they gathered around the holographic display showing the Vex formation, Dr. Thurox spoke what they were all thinking. Even if help were coming, what could anyone do against that? He gestured at the display showing over 200 Vex ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns around their station. The largest vessels were harvesters, massive craft designed to strip entire planets of resources and population. Escort cruisers formed protective screens around them, while smaller hunter-class ships prowled the perimeter like predators. At the center of the formation sat something none of them had seen before: a command nexus, a spherical vessel nearly 10 kilometers in diameter that pulsed with ominous energy. "The database shows no record of anyone successfully engaging a Vex force this large," Lieutenant Cass reported quietly. "The hegemony lost an entire battle fleet trying to stop a harvester group half this size." Zara studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. The station's defenses were designed to deter pirates and minor threats, not a full-scale invasion force. Their shield generators might hold for another few hours, but once those failed, the station's hull would crumple like paper under Vex weaponry. "What about the experimental quantum disruptors we've been developing?" suggested Dr. Thurox. "If we could modify them into weapons." "The prototypes are barely stable enough for laboratory testing," replied Dr. Nexus, the team's quantum specialist. "Weaponizing them would be suicide. The energy feedback could destroy the station before the Vex even breach our shields. Outside, the Vex ships maintained their positions with mechanical precision. No patrol patterns, no random movement. just the cold efficiency of machines that knew their prey was trapped. It was this very efficiency that made them so terrifying. They wasted no energy on intimidation or psychological warfare because they simply didn't need to. Zara moved to the communications console and opened a general channel to all sections of the station. Her voice echoed through corridors where researchers and support staff huddled in terror, clinging to whatever hope they could find. "This is Commander Keelix. I won't lie to you about our situation. The Vex will breach our defenses in approximately 6 hours. Help is not coming, but we are not helpless. Every day we delay them here is another day for other worlds to prepare their defenses. We have something they want, our research data. They're not trying to destroy us quickly because they need what's in our computers intact." She paused, looking at the faces around her. "We're going to deny them that victory. We're going to fight for every minute, and when the time comes, we're going to make sure they get nothing from our sacrifice." The beacon continued its lonely transmission into the void, carrying their desperate plea across light years of empty space. In the cold mathematics of galactic warfare, Research Station Kepler-7 was already written off as lost. The Vex had never failed to claim their prey, but mathematics had never accounted for the impossible stubbornness of species that refused to surrender, even when surrender was the only logical choice. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe had a way of proving that logic wasn't the only force that mattered in the grand equation of survival. Lieutenant Sarah Chen pressed her face against the viewport of the UES Defiant, watching stars streak past as the ship dropped out of hyperspace. The transition always made her stomach lurch, but today the sensation was different. Today it felt like falling into hell. "Contact. Multiple bogeys on long-range sensors," called out Ensign Rodriguez from the sensor station. "Holy Mother of..." "Captain, you need to see this." Captain Marcus Webb moved to the tactical display, his weathered face grim in the blue glow of the hologram. 20 years of service in the United Earth Navy had shown him many battles, but the formation before them defied everything he thought he knew about space warfare. 237 vessels, reported Rodriguez, his voice barely steady. "Configuration unknown, but the energy signatures..." "Captain, those aren't any ships in our database." Webb studied the geometric perfection of the alien fleet surrounding what appeared to be a small space station. The attacking vessels moved with an unsettling precision, like pieces of some vast mechanical puzzle. No human fleet could maintain such perfect formation while conducting a siege. "We received that distress beacon 4 days ago," said Commander Lisa Park, Webb's executive officer. "Command told us to investigate, but they never mentioned anything like this." The truth was that Earth's high command hadn't known what to expect. The distress signal had been transmitted on frequencies that Earth scientists barely understood, using quantum encryption methods that pushed their technology to its limits. The message itself had been fragmented, but the meaning was clear. Someone was dying and they were begging for help. Earth's response had been swift and decisive. The Defiant, one of humanity's newest destroyers, had been dispatched with orders to investigate and render aid if possible. The ship represented the pinnacle of human engineering, fusion-powered, armed with railguns and missile systems that could crack an asteroid in half, and crewed by the finest officers the United Earth Navy could produce. Now, as they faced an alien armada that could blot out star systems, those accomplishments seemed pitifully inadequate. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy discharges," reported Chief Petty Officer Kim from the engineering station. "Whatever weapons those ships are using, they're way beyond anything in our tech manuals." Webb nodded slowly. The smart move would be to retreat, to return to Earth with intelligence about this new threat. Let the Admiralty decide how to respond to first contact with a hostile alien civilization. But the distress beacon was still transmitting, and somewhere in that station, people were dying while waiting for help that the galaxy had apparently decided wasn't coming. "How many crew aboard that station?" he asked. "Scanning now, sir," Rodriguez replied. 47 life signs, various species. They're definitely not human, but they're definitely alive. Webb looked around the bridge at his crew of 38 men and women who had volunteered for deep space exploration. They had signed up to push the boundaries of human knowledge, to plant Earth's flag among the stars. None of them had expected to face a scenario where they might be the only thing standing between innocent lives and annihilation. Tactical assessment. "Commander Park," Webb ordered. Park studied the sensor data, her expression growing more troubled by the second. Sir, this isn't a battle we can win. Those ships are each individually larger than anything in Earth's fleet. Their weapons are actively degrading the station's shields, and from what I can tell, they're doing it with casual efficiency. Options? We could attempt to evacuate the station, suggested Lieutenant Chen from the helm. The Defiant's cargo bays could hold maybe 20 people, if we stripped out all non-essential equipment. Leaving 27 to die, Webb replied quietly. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems and the occasional beep of sensor updates. Everyone understood the mathematics of the situation. The Defiant was a single ship, facing a fleet that could probably destroy entire planets. By every measure of military logic, they should retreat immediately. Sir, incoming transmission from the station, reported the communications officer. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the face of an alien being with blue skin and 4 eyes. Despite the obvious differences, the expression of desperate hope was unmistakably universal. Unknown vessel. This is Commander Zara Kelix of Research Station Kepler 7. Are you responding to our distress beacon? Webb stepped forward, straightening his uniform. This is Captain Marcus Webb of the United Earthship Defiant. We received your transmission and came to investigate. The alien's 4 eyes widened with something that might have been surprise or disbelief. Earth? We've never heard of your species. How did you receive our beacon? The quantum encryption should have been incompatible with most known technologies. We adapted, Webb replied simply. What's your situation, Commander? The Vex Collective has us surrounded. They've demanded our surrender and will breach our defenses within 2 hours. We have 47 researchers and support staff aboard this station. Captain, your ship appears to be alone. You should retreat immediately. There's nothing you can do against a Vex battle group this size. Webb looked at the tactical display showing the overwhelming enemy force, then back at the alien commander whose species he had never seen before but whose courage he recognized instantly. How long do you need to evacuate your people? Captain, Commander Park whispered urgently. We can't take them all, and even if we could, those alien ships would destroy us before we could escape the system. Kelix seemed to understand the exchange. Captain Webb, appreciate your offer, but we won't abandon our research. This data could help other worlds defend themselves against the Vex. We're prepared to die here rather than let it fall into their hands. Webb studied the formation of enemy ships, his mind racing through tactical possibilities. Every scenario ended the same way. The Defiant destroyed, her crew dead, and the station's defenders dying anyway. But something about the alien commander's determination reminded him why he had joined the Navy in the first place. Commander Kelix, this is probably going to sound insane, but what if we don't evacuate? What if we fight? The alien's expression shifted to one of complete bewilderment. Captain, with respect, you have 1 ship. The Vex have over 200 vessels, including a command nexus. Even the hegemony Navy wouldn't engage a force this large. Webb smiled grimly. Ma'am, with respect, the hegemony Navy isn't from Earth. The war room aboard the UES Defiant had never hosted a meeting quite like this one. Captain Webb stood before a holographic display showing the tactical situation, while Commander Kelix appeared as a blue-tinted projection, her 4 eyes wide with disbelief as she listened to what the humans were proposing. Let me understand this correctly, Kelix said slowly. You want to attack a Vex command nexus with a single destroyer that's smaller than their escort cruisers? That's the basic idea, Webb confirmed. But we're not planning a frontal assault. Chief Engineer Rodriguez had been working frantically for the past hour, pulling up technical specifications and running calculations. Commander Kelix, we've analyzed the energy patterns from your station's shields. The Vex are using focused particle beams to create resonance failures in your quantum barriers. It's incredibly sophisticated, but it also requires them to maintain precise positioning. Lieutenant Chen highlighted sections of the enemy formation on the tactical display. Their ships are arranged in a perfect geometric pattern around your station. That formation gives them optimal firing angles and ensures maximum shield degradation, but it also means they can't maneuver quickly without disrupting their own attack. Kelix studied the human analysis, her expression shifting from confusion to cautious interest. You're suggesting that their strength is also their weakness? Exactly, said Commander Park. The Vex rely on mathematical precision and overwhelming firepower. But that precision makes them predictable, and humans have always specialized in being unpredictable. Webb gestured to the display showing the Defiant's specifications. Our ship may be smaller, but we have advantages they won't expect. Our weapons use kinetic penetrators and fusion warheads instead of energy beams. Our armor is ceramic metallic composite instead of energy shields. Most importantly, our tactics are based on human naval doctrine, which apparently doesn't exist in your galaxy. Dr. Thurox, who had been listening silently from the station, finally spoke up. Captain, even assuming your unconventional weapons could damage Vex hulls, you're still talking about one ship against hundreds. The mathematics are impossible. Webb smiled grimly. Doctor, humans stopped believing in impossible mathematics about the time we figured out how to fly metal machines heavier than air. Sometimes the best strategy is to do something so crazy that the enemy can't predict it. The plan that emerged over the next hour was indeed crazy by any reasonable standard. The Defiant would use the station's quantum signature as cover, approaching through the sensor shadow created by the research facility's exotic emissions. Once within range, they would launch a concentrated torpedo barrage at the command nexus while simultaneously broadcasting false sensor signatures to confuse the Vex. Targeting systems, the key is speed and chaos, explained Lieutenant Chen. We hit them hard, fast, and in a way they can't immediately understand. While they're trying to figure out what we are and how we're doing what we're doing, we keep moving and hitting different targets. Calyx looked skeptical. And when they adapt to your tactics? Then we adapt faster, Webb replied. That's what humans do. We learn, we improvise, we overcome. The alien commander was quiet for a long moment, studying the faces of the human crew. Despite the obvious terror of their situation, she saw something in their expressions that she had never encountered before. A complete refusal to accept defeat, even when defeat was mathematically certain. Captain Webb, I have to ask why you're doing this. Your species has no obligation to us. You don't even know who we are. Webb considered the question seriously. Commander, where I come from, we have a saying, no one left behind. It doesn't matter if they're human or alien. If someone calls for help and we can answer, we answer. That's what separates us from machines like the Vex. The preparations began immediately. The Defiant's weapons were recalibrated for maximum kinetic impact. Her sensors were modified to work in conjunction with the station's quantum emissions, and her engines were pushed to combat specifications that would have made Earth safety inspectors faint. Meanwhile, aboard the station, the research staff worked feverishly to compile their most critical data into portable storage units. If the human plan somehow succeeded, they wanted to be ready to transmit everything they had learned to warn other worlds about Vex capabilities. 1 hour until they breach our shields, reported Dr. Nexus, monitoring the station's defensive systems. The quantum barriers are failing across 17 sections. Webb nodded grimly. Then it's time to find out what humans can do when they're really angry. The Defiant broke from her concealed position behind a small asteroid, her fusion engines flaring to life as she accelerated toward the Vex formation. To the alien sensors monitoring the battle, the human ship appeared to be committing elaborate suicide, a single small vessel charging directly at an armada that could turn planets to ash. But aboard the Defiant, the crew was calm and focused. They had drilled for impossible scenarios, trained for battles that couldn't be won through conventional means. Now they would discover whether human stubbornness and ingenuity could overcome the cold mathematical certainty of Vex tactical doctrine. Target lock on the command nexus, reported the weapons officer. All torpedo tubes loaded and ready. Take us in, Lieutenant Chen, Webb ordered. And remember, we're not trying to win this battle through firepower. We're trying to win it by being so absolutely insane that the Vex can't compute our next move. The Defiant accelerated to attack speed, her hull singing with the stress of combat maneuvers as she dove toward the geometric perfection of the Vex fleet. Behind her, the research station's shields flickered and failed, exposing 47 beings who had put their faith in a species they had never heard of. The Vex, for their part, registered the approaching vessel with the same cold efficiency they applied to all threats. Initial analysis classified it as a minor nuisance, easily destroyed by the nearest escort cruiser. But as the human ship entered weapons range and began its attack run, something unprecedented happened in the collective consciousness of the machine entities. For the first time in their recorded history, the Vex encountered a tactical doctrine that simply did not compute. The first torpedo salvo from the UES Defiant struck the Vex command nexus with the force of a small star, going supernova. The massive spherical vessel, designed to withstand energy weapons and particle beams, had no defense against the crude kinetic warheads that punched through its hull like bullets through paper. "Direct hits on the command nexus," shouted Ensign Rodriguez, his voice barely audible over the alarm sirens. "Their shields didn't even register our torpedo types, Captain." Webb gripped his command chair as the Defiant rolled through a series of evasive maneuvers that would have been impossible for the larger Vex. "Vessels to match. That's because they've never seen projectile weapons before. Their whole defensive doctrine is built around deflecting energy attacks." The Vex response was immediate and overwhelming. Particle beams lanced through space where the Defiant had been seconds before, each blast carrying enough energy to vaporize a small moon. But the human ship danced between the attacks with an unpredictability that the machine entities simply couldn't calculate. "They're trying to establish firing solutions," reported Lieutenant Chen from the helm. "But our flight pattern isn't following any recognizable mathematical sequence." "That's because there isn't one," Webb replied grimly. "I'm making this up as we go along." Aboard Research Station Kepler-7, Commander Keelix watched the impossible battle unfolding before her with a mixture of awe and terror. The small human vessel moved through the Vex formation like a minnow swimming among sharks, somehow avoiding destruction through sheer audacity and unpredictable tactics. "Their ship is ignoring fundamental laws of space combat," Dr. Thurox muttered, studying the sensor readings. "No vessel that size should be able to maneuver like that while maintaining weapons lock on multiple targets." "Maybe that's exactly why it's working," Keelix replied. "The Vex are machines. They think in algorithms and mathematical certainties, but these humans appear to be operating on pure intuition and improvisation." The Defiant's second torpedo spread found its mark on one of the harvester vessels, the massive ship shuddering as explosions rippled along its hull. For the first time in recorded history, a Vex harvester listed to port, its perfect geometric alignment disrupted by catastrophic hull breaches. "Scratch one, harvester," called out the weapons officer. "But Captain, we're drawing heavy fire from the escort cruisers." The bridge shook violently as a particle beam grazed the Defiant's hull, overwhelming the ship's primitive energy shields and scoring deep gouges in the ceramic armor. Warning lights flashed red across every console as damage reports flooded in from all sections. "Engineering reports shield generators are offline," announced Commander Park. "Hull integrity down to 70% and falling." Webb studied the tactical display, watching as more Vex ships broke from their formation to converge on his position. The element of surprise was wearing off, and the machine entities were beginning to adapt to human tactics with their characteristic cold efficiency. "Time to change the game again," he muttered. "Lieutenant Chen, plot a course directly through the center of their formation. Emergency power to engines." "Sir, that's suicide," Chen protested. "They'll have overlapping fields of fire from every angle." "Exactly," Webb replied. "They'll also risk hitting each other if they fire simultaneously. The Vex prioritize precision over everything else. They won't take shots that might damage their own vessels." The Defiant plunged into the heart of the enemy formation like a meteor diving into atmosphere. Vex cruisers found themselves unable to fire without risking friendly casualties, their perfect tactical coordination becoming a liability as the human ship wove between them with reckless abandon. But the reprieve was temporary. The Vex were already adapting, recalculating firing solutions and repositioning to create safe attack corridors. Webb could see the mathematical precision reasserting itself as the machine entities found ways to counter human unpredictability. "Captain, incoming transmission from the command nexus," reported the communications officer. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the angular face of a Vex Prime. Its metallic features showed no emotion, but there was something different in its synthesized voice when it spoke. "Human vessel, you have disrupted our tactical protocols with methods not found in our databases. This is unprecedented." Webb straightened in his command chair, meeting the machine entity's gaze without flinching. "Welcome to humanity. We specialize in doing things that aren't in anybody's database." "Your resistance is mathematically futile," the Vex Prime continued. "Our analysis indicates your vessel will be destroyed within 12 minutes and 37 seconds. Yet you continue to fight. This behavior serves no logical purpose." "Logic is overrated," Webb replied. "Sometimes you have to do what's right instead of what makes sense." The transmission ended. But not before Webb caught something in the machine entity's expression that he had never expected to see. Confusion. The Vex were creatures of pure logic and mathematical certainty. They had conquered star systems through the application of overwhelming force and tactical precision. But they had never encountered an enemy that simply refused to accept defeat, even when defeat was inevitable. New contacts on long-range sensors. Rodriguez suddenly shouted. Multiple vessels dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge. The tactical display updated to show 3 more ships approaching at maximum velocity. They were larger than the Defiant, but still dwarfed by the Vex armada. Webb felt his heart sink as he realized what was happening. "Captain," Lieutenant Chen said quietly, "those are human ships, the UES Yorktown, Manchester, and Tokyo, the entire 3rd Deep Space Squadron." Webb stared at the display in disbelief. "How did they—" "Sir, incoming transmission from the Yorktown," the communications officer reported. The screen switched to show Admiral Sarah Martinez, her weathered face set in grim determination. "Marcus, you didn't think we'd let you have all the fun, did you? 3rd Squadron battle stations. Let's show these machines what happens when they mess with our people." The cavalry had arrived, but as Webb looked at the overwhelming numbers still arrayed against them, he wondered if even human stubbornness could overcome odds this impossible. The real battle was just beginning, and somewhere in the depths of space, word was already spreading about the strange new species that fought like demons and refused to surrender even when victory was mathematically impossible. The Vex had faced many enemies in their conquest of the galaxy, but they had never faced humanity, and they were about to learn that some forces in the universe simply couldn't be calculated or contained. Admiral Sarah Martinez stood on the bridge of the UES Yorktown, watching her tactical display as 4 human destroyers faced down an armada that had terrorized 3 star systems. The mathematics of the situation were stark and unforgiving, but mathematics had never stopped humans before. "All vessels, this is Admiral Martinez," she broadcast to the small fleet. "We're going to execute a modified Wolfpack maneuver. Captain Webb has already proven that Vex ships can't adapt quickly to kinetic weapons and unpredictable tactics. We're going to hit them with everything we've got while they're still trying to figure out what the hell we are." The UES Manchester, under Captain Elena Vasquez, took point position as the newest ship in the fleet. Her experimental railguns could fire tungsten slugs at nearly 10% the speed of light, turning each projectile into a relativistic weapon that could punch through any known armor. The UES Tokyo, commanded by Captain Hiroshi Nakamura, had been retrofitted with humanity's first prototype fusion warheads designed specifically for ship-to-ship combat. Each missile carried enough destructive force to crack a small asteroid, and unlike energy weapons, they couldn't be deflected by conventional shielding. The UES Defiant, already deep in the enemy formation, had become the tip of the spear that would split the Vex fleet apart. Captain Webb's wild improvisations had bought them precious time, but now the real test would begin. "Yorktown to Kepler 7, Martinez transmitted to the research station. "Commander Keelix, we're going to need you to drop your remaining shields and reroute all power to your quantum transmitters." "Admiral, that will leave us completely defenseless," Keelix replied, her 4 eyes wide with concern. "Trust me, we have a plan." The plan was insane even by human standards. The research station would use its quantum transmitters to create massive interference patterns throughout the local space, effectively jamming the sophisticated targeting systems that allowed the Vex to coordinate their attacks with mathematical precision. Without their perfect tactical coordination, the machine entities would be forced to fight as individual units rather than a unified collective. "All ships, begin attack run," Martinez ordered. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy their entire fleet. We just need to create enough chaos to evacuate the station and get our research data back to Earth." The 4 human destroyers accelerated toward the Vex formation from different vectors, their approach pattern so random and unpredictable that the machine entity's computers struggled to calculate intercept courses. For creatures that existed in a universe of mathematical certainties, the human tendency toward controlled chaos was more disorienting than any weapon. The Manchester fired first, her railgun sending streams of tungsten death across space at velocities that made them nearly impossible to track. The relativistic impact struck 3 Vex cruisers simultaneously, punching clean through their hulls and creating cascade failures in their quantum containment systems. The Tokyo followed with a full spread of fusion warheads, the missiles weaving through defensive fire with guidance systems that operated on human intuition, rather than predictable algorithms. When they detonated against the command nexus, the massive vessel shuddered like a living thing in pain. "Direct hits on multiple targets," reported Captain Vasquez. "Their armor can't handle kinetic impacts at these velocities." But the Vex were learning. Already the surviving ships were adapting their formations to account for the human weapons. Point defense systems began tracking the incoming projectiles with increasing accuracy, and return fire started finding its mark on the human vessels. The Defiant took a direct hit from a particle beam that overloaded her remaining shields and sent shockwaves through her hull. Emergency bulkheads sealed automatically as atmosphere vented from 3 separate breaches. "Hull integrity down to 40%, reported Commander Park, her voice steady despite the smoke filling the bridge. "We can't take many more hits like that." Captain Webb studied the tactical display, watching as the Vex formation slowly reorganized itself to counter human tactics. The machine entities were creatures of pure logic, but logic was a powerful tool when given enough time to process and adapt. "Admiral Martinez, the Vex are learning too fast," he transmitted to the Yorktown. "They'll have our number within the next few minutes." "Then we better make those minutes count," Martinez replied grimly. The quantum interference from Research Station Kepler-7 had begun to take effect, creating cascading disruptions in the Vex command network. For the first time in their collective memory, individual Vex ships found themselves operating independently, cut off from the unified consciousness that gave them their tactical superiority. The result was chaos of a kind the machine entities had never experienced. Ships that had operated in perfect coordination for millennia suddenly found themselves unable to communicate or coordinate their attacks. Some vessels held position, waiting for orders that would never come. Others began firing independently, their targeting solutions degraded by quantum static. "Now," Martinez shouted, "all ships concentrate fire on the command nexus. If we can take out their primary coordination hub, the rest of the fleet will be operating blind." The 4 human destroyers converged on the massive spherical vessel like wolves attacking a wounded bear. Railgun slugs and fusion warheads hammered the nexus from all angles, overwhelming its defensive systems through sheer volume of fire. But the Vex Prime aboard the command nexus had one final strategy. If it couldn't coordinate its fleet, it would simply sacrifice them all to eliminate the human threat. The massive vessel began to glow with ominous energy as it prepared to overload its quantum core, creating an explosion that would vaporize everything within 1,000 kilometers. "Admiral, the Nexus is going critical," warned Captain Nakamura. "They're going to take us all with them." Martinez looked at her tactical display, calculating distances and escape velocities. The numbers were clear. None of the human ships could reach minimum safe distance before the Nexus detonated. They had come so far, fought so hard, only to face annihilation in the moment of victory. But aboard Research Station Kepler-7, Dr. Thurox was frantically working at his quantum manipulation console. "Commander Calyx, I can use our experimental quantum disruptors to create a containment field around the Nexus. It might be able to bottle up the explosion long enough for the human ships to escape." "The feedback will destroy the station," Calyx replied quietly. "I know." Calyx looked around at her crew, at the 47 beings who had devoted their lives to pushing the boundaries of scientific knowledge. They had already accepted their deaths when the Vex arrived. Now they had a chance to make those deaths mean something. "Do it," she ordered. The research station's experimental quantum disruptors activated, creating a shimmering barrier of twisted spacetime around the command nexus. It was barely contained science, technology that pushed the boundaries of what was thought possible. But sometimes impossible was exactly what the universe needed. The explosion, when it came, was magnificent and terrible. The command nexus vanished in a ball of quantum fire that would have been visible from 3 star systems away. But the containment field held just long enough. The human ships rode the edge of the shockwave to safety, while the Vex fleet, suddenly leaderless and still cut off from their collective consciousness, began to retreat in confusion. As the smoke cleared and the quantum interference faded, Admiral Martinez found herself staring at empty space where Research Station Kepler-7 had been. 47 beings had sacrificed themselves to save 4 human ships they had never met, trusting in a species they had only just discovered. The Vex were gone, Their perfect fleet scattered and broken by tactics they couldn't understand and courage they couldn't compute. But the real victory wasn't in the battlefield. It was in the message that would soon spread across the galaxy. When someone called for help, humanity answered. And when humanity answered, impossible things became possible. 3 months after the Battle of Kepler-7, the Galactic Congress convened an emergency session for the first time in over 2 centuries. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the massive amphitheater on Nexus Prime, their voices creating a cacophony of languages, clicks, hums, and electronic translations that filled the chamber with nervous energy. At the center of it all sat the human delegation, 5 beings who looked utterly unremarkable compared to the exotic alien forms surrounding them. Admiral Sarah Martinez wore her dress uniform with quiet dignity, while Captain Marcus Webb looked distinctly uncomfortable in the formal diplomatic setting. But it was Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's chief xenobiologist, who commanded the most attention as she stood to address the assembly. "Honored representatives," she began, her words translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. 3 months ago, humanity made first contact with galactic civilization, under circumstances none of us would have chosen. But those circumstances revealed something that I believe will change the course of galactic history. On the massive display screens surrounding the amphitheater, recordings from the Battle of Kepler-7 played out in stark detail. The impossible charge of the UES Defiant against overwhelming odds, the arrival of reinforcements that shouldn't have existed, the desperate last stand of Research Station Kepler-7's crew, and finally the sight of the unstoppable Vex Collective retreating in confusion and disorder. For 700 years, Dr. Vasquez continued, the galaxy has operated under the assumption that the Vex are an unstoppable force, that their mathematical precision and overwhelming firepower make resistance futile, but humanity has proven that assumption wrong. Ambassador Keth Voran of the Hegemony, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's lights into rainbow patterns, stood to address the human delegation. Dr. Vasquez, with respect, you defeated a single Vex battle group through tactics that cost you significant casualties and required the sacrifice of an entire research station. The collective controls over 10,000 star systems. How do you propose to replicate this success on a galactic scale? Webb stood slowly, his uniform still bearing the scorch marks from his ship's battle damage. Ambassador, you're thinking like a machine. You're trying to calculate victory in terms of fleet numbers and firepower ratios. But that's not how humans win wars. Then how do you win them? Asked Counselor Nexus, her tentacles writhing with nervous energy. By making it too expensive for the enemy to keep fighting, Webb replied simply. The Vex operate on the principle of overwhelming force and mathematical certainty. But every time they face humans, they're going to lose ships they can't afford to replace. More importantly, they're going to face tactics they can't predict or counter. Admiral Martinez activated a holographic display showing human ship designs and battle doctrine. The Vex have adapted their technology and tactics to counter every known form of galactic warfare. Energy shields, particle weapons, predictable formation flying. But they've never faced kinetic weapons fired by crews trained in human naval tradition. The alien representatives studied the technical specifications with growing interest. Human ships were primitive by galactic standards, their technology centuries behind the most advanced civilizations. But that primitiveness was exactly what made them effective against Vex defenses. Your weapons are crude, observed Scientific Counselor Thranks, his multiple eyes focusing independently on different aspects of the display. Projectile weapons haven't been used in galactic warfare for millennia. Because you evolved past them, Martinez replied. But the Vex evolved past them too. Their defenses are designed to counter sophisticated energy weapons, not chunks of metal fired at relativistic velocities. Dr. Vasquez activated another display showing battle footage from Kepler-7. But technology is only part of the equation. The real advantage humans bring is tactical unpredictability. The Vex are machines. They think in algorithms and probability matrices. But human commanders operate on intuition, improvisation, and something the galaxy seems to have forgotten. The willingness to take impossible risks for the right reasons. You speak of sacrifice as if it were a virtue, commented Ambassador Voran. The crew of Research Station Kepler-7 died because they chose to fight rather than surrender. How is this different from the fanaticism that has destroyed so many civilizations? The chamber fell silent at the question. It was the heart of what made humanity both fascinating and terrifying to galactic civilization. Their absolute refusal to accept defeat even when defeat was mathematically certain. Captain Webb stepped forward, his voice carrying the weight of hard-won experience. Ambassador, there's a difference between fanaticism and principle. Fanatics fight because they can't see any other choice. Humans fight because we choose to, even when we can see all the other choices clearly. The crew of Kepler-7 knew they were going to die, Dr. Vasquez added quietly. They made the conscious decision to use their deaths to save strangers they had never met. That's not fanaticism. That's what we call being human. A new voice spoke from the back of the chamber, causing every head to turn in surprise. They also made a choice to trust a species they had never heard of to carry on their work. The speaker was Commander Zara Calix, somehow alive despite the destruction of her station. Her 4 eyes showed the strain of recovery from severe radiation exposure, but her voice was strong and clear. I survived because I was evacuated to the UES Tokyo just before our containment field failed, she explained to the astonished assembly. But before I left, Dr. Thurox gave me this. She held up a small quantum storage device that seemed to pulse with inner light. The complete research data from our experiments with quantum crystalline structures. 7 years of work that could revolutionize defensive technology across the galaxy, work that the Vex wanted desperately enough to deploy a command nexus. Admiral Martinez nodded slowly. Commander Calix has agreed to share this research with any species willing to join a mutual defense pact against the Vex Collective. Not a surrender, not a negotiated peace, but an active resistance movement dedicated to pushing them back from every system they've conquered. The implications rippled through the chamber like a shockwave. For centuries, galactic civilization had accepted the Vex as an inevitable force of nature, like stellar collapse or entropy itself. The idea of actually fighting back, of organizing an active resistance, was almost unthinkable. And you believe this resistance can succeed? Asked Ambassador Vorin. I believe it's already succeeding, Webb replied. 3 months ago, the Vex seemed unstoppable. Today, they're avoiding the Kepler sector entirely, because they can't calculate how to counter human tactics. Tomorrow, they'll be avoiding more sectors as more species adopt our methods. Dr. Vasquez smiled grimly. The Vex operate on certainty and mathematical precision. But humans specialize in making the impossible happen through sheer bloody-minded stubbornness. And apparently, that's exactly what the galaxy needs right now. The vote, when it came, was closer than humanity had hoped, but decisive enough to matter. 23 species agreed to join the resistance movement, sharing technology and tactical doctrine with Earth's military. It wasn't the entire galaxy, but it was a beginning. As the session adjourned and representatives began filing out of the chamber, Commander Calix approached the human delegation. Admiral Martinez, I have one question. When your ships arrived at Kepler-7, you had no idea who we were or whether we deserved saving. What made you decide to fight? Martinez considered the question carefully. Commander, in human culture we have a saying, greater love has no one than this, that they lay down their life for their friends. But we've discovered something even greater, laying down your life for strangers. Because if you can do that, then nobody in the universe ever has to face the darkness alone. As the human delegation prepared to return to Earth with their new allies, word was already spreading through the galactic communication networks. The Vex Collective, for the first time in their recorded history, had encountered something they couldn't conquer or comprehend. A species that simply refused to be calculated, predicted, or defeated. The real war was just beginning. But humanity had already achieved something no other species thought possible. They had given the galaxy hope. 2 years after the Battle of Kepler-7, Fleet Admiral Marcus Webb stood on the observation deck of the UES Endeavour, humanity's first purpose-built battleship, watching the Liberation Fleet assemble in Earth orbit. 300 vessels from 29 different species hung in formation against the starfield, their diverse designs reflecting the technological and cultural heritage of dozens of worlds, united by a single purpose. The resistance movement had grown far beyond what anyone had imagined possible. The Hegemony Navy contributed their advanced energy shields and faster-than-light communication systems. The Nexari brought quantum tunneling technology that allowed instantaneous coordination across vast distances. The Thranks offered biological computers that could process tactical information in ways that purely mechanical systems couldn't match. But at the heart of it all were human ships and human crews, their crude kinetic weapons and unpredictable tactics serving as the backbone of a military doctrine that had stopped the Vex advance cold and begun pushing them back, system by system. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Yorktown," reported Commander Sarah Kim, Webb's operations officer and the daughter of the engineer who had helped save Kepler-7. The main display flickered to life, showing Admiral Martinez aboard the flagship of the Liberation Fleet. Behind her, Webb could see the bridge crew working with quiet efficiency, humans and aliens serving side by side in a partnership that would have been unthinkable just 2 years ago. "Marcus, we've just received confirmation from our deep reconnaissance teams," Martinez reported. "The Vex have consolidated their remaining forces in the Andromache system. Over 4,000 ships, including 3 command nexuses and something our analysts are calling a central processing core." Webb studied the tactical intelligence flowing across his displays. The Vex had learned from their encounters with human forces, adapting their strategies and technologies to counter kinetic weapons and unpredictable tactics. But they had also revealed something that no one had expected. They were capable of fear. "They're making their final stand," Webb observed. "Everything they have left, concentrated in one system that they think they can defend. The intelligence suggests they're trying to develop new weapons specifically designed to counter our tactical doctrine," Martinez continued. "Predictive algorithms that can anticipate human improvisation, kinetic barriers that can stop our projectile weapons." Webb nodded slowly. The cat-and-mouse game between human ingenuity and Vex adaptation had been ongoing for 2 years, each side learning from their victories and defeats. But there was something the machines still didn't understand about humanity. The more impossible the odds became, the more creative humans got in response. "Sarah, patch me through to all ships in the Liberation Fleet," Webb ordered. The communication network carried his voice to 300 vessels and nearly 40,000 crew members, representing the greatest alliance in galactic history. Human voices mixed with alien clicks, hums, and electronic translations as the fleet prepared for what everyone knew would be the decisive battle of the war. "This is Admiral Webb. 2 years ago, a single human ship answered a distress call from strangers we had never met. Today we're about to finish what that ship started. The Vex have gathered everything they have left in the Andromache system, betting that their technology and numbers can overcome our alliance." He paused, looking out at the assembled fleet that represented hope for billions of beings across the galaxy. "They're about to discover that some forces in the universe can't be calculated or contained. We're not fighting this battle to conquer territory or claim resources. We're fighting it to prove that courage and determination can overcome any algorithm." The fleet moved out in formation, their diverse ships somehow managing to maintain coordination, despite radically different propulsion systems and tactical doctrines. At the center of the formation, a specially modified vessel carried the most important cargo in the galaxy: Commander Zara Kellix and the complete research archives of 47 civilizations that had fallen to the Vex over the centuries. If the Liberation Fleet succeeded, that knowledge would be used to rebuild what had been lost. If they failed, it would at least survive to inspire future resistance movements. But Webb had no intention of failing. The journey to Andromache took 6 days through hyperspace, giving the Alliance forces time to rehearse their battle plans and coordinate their diverse technologies. Human kinetic weapons would be supported by hegemony energy shields and Nexari quantum tunneling systems. Thrank's biological computers would process tactical data, while crystalline precision guidance systems directed their fire. But the real innovation was in the tactics themselves. Instead of trying to match Vex precision with mathematical certainty, the Alliance had embraced controlled chaos as a strategic doctrine. Every ship captain had been trained in human improvisational techniques, learning to make split-second decisions based on intuition rather than algorithms. "Contact with Vex perimeter forces," reported the sensor officer as the fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Andromache system. 4,317 vessels in defensive formation around the 4th planet. Webb studied the tactical display showing the Vex fleet, arranged in perfect geometric patterns around their stronghold. It was the largest concentration of machine forces ever assembled, representing the collective military might of an empire that had conquered half the galaxy. "They're beautiful in their perfection," observed Commander Keelix, who had requested permission to witness the final battle from the Endeavor's bridge. Even now, even knowing they're about to be defeated, they maintain their mathematical precision. "That precision is about to become their downfall," Webb replied grimly. "All ships execute Plan Omega. Remember, we're not trying to outfight them. We're trying to outthink them." Plan Omega was the culmination of 2 years of human tactical innovation. Instead of engaging the Vex fleet directly, the Alliance forces would use quantum tunneling technology to appear throughout the system simultaneously, creating dozens of individual battles that the machine entities couldn't coordinate effectively. The result was chaos on a scale that the Vex had never experienced. Suddenly, their perfect defensive formation was broken as Alliance ships materialized inside their perimeter, engaging targets at point-blank range with weapons and tactics that defied every mathematical model the machines had developed. Human destroyers fired kinetic salvos that punched through Vex hulls like paper, while hegemony cruisers provided covering fire with energy weapons. Nexari stealth ships appeared behind enemy formations to disable command vessels, while Thranks bioships used living computers to jam Vex communication networks. But the real victory came when the 3 command nexuses tried to coordinate a counterattack and discovered that human tactics had evolved beyond their ability to predict or counter. Every time the machines calculated a response to one threat, 3 more appeared from directions they hadn't anticipated. The Central Processing Core, the massive vessel that served as the Vex Collective's primary consciousness, found itself isolated and vulnerable as its protective fleet scattered in confusion. When the UES Endeavor and her escorts closed for the final attack, the machine entity did something unprecedented in its long history. It surrendered. "Human Commander," the synthesized voice spoke across all communication channels. "We acknowledge defeat. Your species has demonstrated capabilities that exceed our computational parameters. We request terms." Webb looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew, human and alien alike, all sharing the same expression of stunned disbelief. The Vex Collective, the unstoppable force that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, was surrendering to a species that had achieved faster-than-light travel less than 5 years ago. "The terms are simple," Webb replied. "Complete withdrawal from all conquered systems, reparations to be paid to surviving populations, and the establishment of a neutral zone that your forces will never cross again. These terms are acceptable," the Vex replied after a long pause. "We will comply with your requirements, but we request one piece of information in exchange. How did your species develop tactical doctrines that our consciousness could not predict or counter?" Webb smiled grimly. "We didn't develop them. We've always had them. They're called courage, determination, and the absolute refusal to accept defeat even when defeat is mathematically certain. You can't calculate those qualities because they're not based on logic. They're based on something you'll never understand: the choice to do what's right instead of what's smart." The liberation of the galaxy took 3 more years to complete, as Alliance forces worked to restore conquered worlds and help displaced populations rebuild their civilizations. But the real work was just beginning. Humanity had proven that the impossible was possible, but now they had to help the galaxy learn to live without fear. Admiral Webb retired from military service and became Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Congress, working to establish the principles that would govern the new age of cooperation and mutual defense. Captain Martinez took command of the Galactic Defense Force, ensuring that no world would ever again face any